I never thought a simple favor would turn into the night that changed everything. It started like any other evening, quiet, uneventful, and honestly, kind of boring. I was just a regular student trying to make it through a tough semester. Between late-night study sessions and juggling part-time work, I barely had time to breathe, let alone imagine my personal life could take such a sharp turn. But then came that unexpected text from Mr. Collins, my literature teacher. He wasn't just any teacher, he was well-liked, calm, the kind of person who never raised his voice but somehow had everyone's respect. He messaged to say he needed help organizing old exam papers in his home office, and since I lived nearby and had always been his top student, he thought I might be willing to help. I didn't think twice before saying yes. There was nothing unusual about the invite, at least not at first. He had always been kind to me, supportive in ways that made me feel seen during a time I often felt invisible. So when I showed up at his house that evening, I wasn't nervous, just curious. He welcomed me in with his usual warm smile, and everything seemed so normal. We made small talk, shared coffee, and got to work going through stacks of dusty folders. For a while, it felt like any other after-hours school task. But as the night went on, the atmosphere shifted in small, unspoken ways. The light from the kitchen dimmed as the evening dragged deeper into night, and our conversation drifted away from school topics to more personal stories, things about his past, his regrets, and even his marriage. I remember how the way he looked at me started to change. It was subtle, at first. A little too much eye contact. A lingering silence between laughs. It was like he was trying to say something without using words, and a strange tension filled the room. I should have picked up on it sooner. But I didn't. Or maybe I didn't want to. I kept telling myself it was harmless. Just a friendly gesture. Just one night. But deep down, something felt off. And when I finally realized what was happening, it was too late to stop it. What started as an innocent visit slowly unraveled into a secret I couldn't take back. A moment that blurred the lines between right and wrong in ways I never imagined. I never told anyone. Not until now. Because after that night, everything in my life changed, my relationship with my classmates, the way I saw myself, even the way I trusted people. And the worst part? I found myself questioning if I had let it happen, or if I had simply been caught in something I didn't fully understand. What really happened that night isn't easy to talk about. But it's time the truth came out. Because secrets like these don't stay buried forever, and what unfolded next made me realize just how far the damage could go. After that night, I couldn't look at myself the same way. Every time I passed by the classroom or heard his name in the hallway, something twisted in my chest. I kept telling myself I hadn't done anything wrong, that maybe I was overthinking it. But the way he looked at me after, the way his voice sounded the next morning in class, it wasn't the same. There was something behind his words now. Something hidden. I started to replay everything in my mind, again and again, trying to figure out where the line had blurred. Mr. Collins had always been supportive, sure. He stayed after class to give feedback, encouraged me when I doubted myself, even helped me apply for a scholarship. But looking back, maybe there were signs I missed. The compliments that felt too personal. The way he'd lean in just a little too close during one-on-one meetings. At the time, I chalked it up to him being nice. Now, I wasn't so sure. At home, things weren't any easier. My mom kept asking why I seemed distracted. My boyfriend, Jake, noticed it too. We weren't exactly perfect, fighting over silly things, drifting apart without even meaning to, but I didn't want to lose him. Still, every time he asked if something was wrong, I just smiled and shook my head. How could I explain something I didn't fully understand myself? I felt stuck between guilt and confusion, like I had crossed a line I hadn't seen coming. The pressure of keeping it inside started to mess with me. My grades slipped. I avoided eye contact with everyone. I even skipped a couple of classes just to avoid seeing him. And yet, somehow, he always found a way to speak to me, asking if I was okay, telling me not to worry, reminding me to keep this between us for my own good. That part always echoed in my head, for my own good. What did that even mean? Worse, I started noticing things I hadn't before. The way he talked to another girl in class, how familiar it sounded. The same compliments, the same smile. Was I the only one? Or had this happened before? That question started to keep me up at night. And deep down, I knew I was about to learn something I wasn't ready for. Something that would make the truth even harder to carry. As the days passed, the weight of that night settled in heavier. What bothered me most wasn't just what happened, it was the silence that followed. Mr. Collins never said much about it, never brought it up directly, but the way he acted around me changed completely. In class, his attention was more cautious, calculated, like he didn't want anyone noticing anything. But after class, when no one was around, his tone would shift, softer, careful, as if he was trying to keep me on his side without saying too much. It was like he was guarding a secret we never agreed to keep. Meanwhile, my relationship with Jake continued to unravel. He could tell something was wrong, but he assumed it had to do with school stress or maybe us growing apart. I wanted to tell him the truth, but every time I tried, I stopped myself. How do you even begin a sentence like that? The guilt was building, and so was the fear of what would happen if he found out, fear of what people at school would think, and fear that maybe I had misunderstood everything and it was all in my head. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Then something strange happened. I overheard a conversation between two girls in the hallway, whispering about Mr. Collins. One of them said she didn't feel comfortable staying after school with him anymore. The other just nodded and said, "He gets too close." That one line hit me like a wave. Too close. That's exactly what I had felt, but hearing someone else say it made it real. I started wondering if there was a pattern, if I wasn't the only one who felt something was off. So I did something I wasn't proud of. I went through Mr. Collins' old emails that I had access to from helping him before. I know it was wrong, but I needed to know. What I found weren't anything outright shocking, no direct messages or obvious confessions, but there were just enough vague notes and thank you emails from a few girls, too many to ignore. Too many that sounded familiar. Now, the conflict wasn't just internal anymore. I was stuck between staying silent and protecting my own peace, or stepping into something much bigger than me. I didn't know who I could trust, and the more I tried to figure it out, the more tangled everything became. Something was clearly wrong, and I was right in the middle of it. After reading those emails, my heart wouldn't stop racing. I couldn't unsee what I'd found. There was a pattern, subtle, but there. Too many girls, all with the same soft tone in their words, the same kind of quiet praise for his support or kindness. I felt like I was staring at a web I didn't realize I was already caught in. My head spun with questions I couldn't answer. Why wasn't anyone saying anything? Did they all feel like I did, confused, ashamed, scared of being blamed? The silence started to eat at me. I stopped sleeping properly. My thoughts were a mess. Every time I walked through the school halls, I felt eyes on me even when no one was looking. My own paranoia was becoming a problem. But it wasn't just that, I started noticing how careful Mr. Collins had become. He was watching me too. Not in the open, obvious way, but I could feel it. Like he was waiting to see what I would do next. That made me feel even more trapped. Then something happened that pushed everything over the edge. Jake found the messages. Not from Mr. Collins, but the late-night texts I had sent to my best friend, trying to make sense of what had happened. I'd never said his name in those texts, but it was clear something had happened with someone. Jake confronted me, eyes full of confusion and pain, asking if I had cheated on him. And just like that, the lie I had buried exploded into a storm I couldn't contain. I tried to explain, but it came out all wrong. He didn't understand, and how could he? Even I didn't fully understand. He left that night, angry and heartbroken, and I didn't stop him. I just sat on my bed, staring at my phone, hands shaking, wondering what would happen if the truth came out, what it would cost me, what it might cost him. But the tipping point came the following week. Another girl, quiet, usually invisible, asked me if she could talk to me privately. The look in her eyes told me everything. She knew. Maybe not the details, but she knew. And when she told me what had happened to her, it was too close to my own story to be a coincidence. Everything was boiling over. The silence was cracking. And now, it wasn't just about me anymore. Something had to give. And I could feel it coming. Her voice was barely above a whisper when she told me what happened. Same setting. Same story. Same confusion. It was like hearing my own thoughts come out of someone else's mouth. I felt sick. Not just because of what she had been through, but because it confirmed what I had been trying so hard to deny. This wasn't an isolated moment or a misunderstanding. This was a pattern. A dangerous one. I asked her if she had told anyone. She shook her head. No one would believe me, she said. He's smart. Careful. He never does anything that can be proven. Her words made my stomach drop. That was the same fear I had. And now I wasn't alone in it. That should have made me feel stronger, but all I felt was panic. If more people knew and still stayed silent, how deep did this really go? I couldn't stop thinking about the way Mr. Collins had watched me in class that week. How he started pairing me with different students, almost as if he was trying to keep me away from the girl who had just opened up to me. It wasn't obvious. He was too experienced for that. But I knew what was happening. He was trying to stay ahead. Trying to stay in control. Then the second twist hit me like a punch to the chest. I was called into the counselor's office out of nowhere. I thought maybe someone had reported something, maybe that girl had spoken up. But no, what I heard next flipped everything upside down. Mr. Collins had filed a complaint against me. He claimed I was spreading false rumors, trying to ruin his reputation because I was upset over academic criticism. My name was suddenly tied to a formal report, and they were investigating the situation. I couldn't believe it. He had turned the tables so fast, and he did it before I could say a word. My voice had been taken from me again, only this time, he made sure to make me look like the aggressor. The school said they needed time to look into both sides, but I could already tell which way things were leaning. He had power. Experience. Years of good relationships with the staff. I was just a student caught in the middle of something no one wanted to admit was happening. I walked out of that office shaking. Not from fear, but from the realization that this wasn't just about the past anymore. Now, he was actively trying to destroy my name. Protect himself at all costs. And suddenly, the stakes were higher than ever. If I didn't speak up now, if I didn't find a way to bring the truth out into the open, I'd lose more than just my peace of mind. I'd lose my future. And maybe, so would the other girls who were too afraid to come forward. But I still had one last thing. Something he didn't know I had. Something that might just change everything. I remember sitting on my bedroom floor that night, heart pounding, trying to decide what to do next. I had the emails. The late-night messages. The screenshots. Nothing too obvious on their own, but together, they painted a story that could no longer be ignored. I had also recorded a voice note from the conversation I had with the other girl. I didn't do it to expose her, I did it because I knew I might need proof. Real proof. Something that would stop him from twisting the truth again. The next morning, I walked straight into the principal's office. No appointment. No hesitation. I placed my phone and printed emails on the desk. You need to listen to this, I said quietly but firmly. And then I played the recording. Her voice, trembling, told the story. Followed by mine, confirming the pattern. The principal sat frozen, unsure of what to say, but I saw the shift in her expression. This wasn't just rumor anymore. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was real. By the end of the day, the school had suspended Mr. Collins pending a full investigation. Word spread fast. Students whispered in corners, staff avoided eye contact, and suddenly, the man who had always seemed untouchable was no longer standing in front of a class. I should have felt relief, but I didn't. Not yet. Because the damage had already been done. To me. To the other girls. To the quiet trust we once had in the people meant to guide us. Jake came back a few days later. He had heard about everything. At first, he just stood in silence, not knowing what to say. And then, for the first time in weeks, I cried in front of him. Not because I was weak, but because I had held it in for too long. He apologized, not for leaving, but for not seeing how much pain I was in. We didn't fix everything that day, but it felt like the first real moment of honesty between us in a long time. But just when I thought it was all over, the unexpected twist came. The counselor who had handled the original complaint? She resigned. Quietly. No announcements. No real explanation. But I found out later, she had ignored similar concerns about Mr. Collins in the past. This had happened before. She had buried them. Protected him. That's why he was so bold. That's why he moved so carefully, because he knew someone on the inside had his back. The truth wasn't just about one man. It was about a system that allowed silence to win. And even though justice had started to unfold, I realized this story wasn't just mine. It belonged to every student who had ever been made to feel small, unheard, or afraid to speak. I spoke up, and it changed everything, but the real fight was just beginning. After the counselor's quiet resignation, everything started to make more sense. The silence, the fear, the way people looked the other way, it wasn't just about Mr. Collins. It was about the people who had the power to stop him and chose not to. That realization hit hard. But it also gave me the strength to keep going. I wasn't just telling my story anymore, I was making sure no one else would have to carry theirs alone. In the weeks that followed, more girls came forward. One by one. Some told small stories, some told ones that broke my heart, but all of them mattered. Our voices together were louder than anything he could deny. The school launched a full investigation, and eventually, Mr. Collins was permanently removed. Not just suspended. Not just transferred. Gone. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. I was called back in by the administration, this time not to be questioned, but to be thanked. They said I had helped change the school's entire approach to student safety. New policies were introduced. A new reporting system was put in place, one that allowed students to speak up without fear. They even brought in outside professionals to support students who needed help processing everything. It wasn't perfect, but it was real change. And it meant the pain wasn't for nothing. Jake and I didn't go back to how we were, but we found something new. Something more honest. He supported me through the public attention that followed, even when it got overwhelming. People online started sharing the story, some called me brave, others questioned my motives. That's how it goes. But I kept telling myself the truth mattered more than the noise. I didn't do it for attention. I did it because silence would have eaten me alive. That night with my teacher was supposed to be harmless. It wasn't. But what followed taught me more about strength, truth, and healing than any class ever could. I learned that infidelity isn't always romantic, it can be a betrayal of trust, power, and boundaries. It can leave scars that take time to name. But it can also lead to change if someone is willing to speak when it's hardest. This isn't just a story about what happened to me. It's a story about what happens when people pretend not to see. And how everything begins to shift the moment someone says, enough. I was just a student. But I became something more the day I stopped being afraid of the truth. If you're watching this and holding on to a secret, know this, you're not alone. And your voice matters, even when it shakes. 36.